By the late 1950s, steam had all but disappeared from U.S. railroads. But on the Grand Trunk Western, it was still alive, on mainline passenger trains and commuter runs, on fast freights and local extras, even in switching service in yards and terminals along the line. Near the end, it was on the Grand Trunk that steam worked every day the way it had on this and other railroads for over 100 years. And Durand, Michigan, the junction of the Chicago-Montreal and Detroit-Muskegon main lines, was a hotbed of steam activity 24 hours a day. Northerns and Mountains were the big power, and Pacifics and 080 switchers were still plentiful. But one locomotive type, the USRA light Mikado, served the GTW in every capacity during these waning years of the Iron Horse. And it's typical of all those fire-breathing machines, once so much a part of daily life. The 282 was a workhorse among the thoroughbreds of the superpower era. Engine 3740 was not the biggest or most powerful locomotive ever built, or the most efficient or most beautiful. Just a grime-clad Mike with a job to do. Seen here in way freight service on the Durand to Detroit run, with engineer Joe Millett at the throttle and Ackerman tending the fire. At one time, the Grand Trunk had 88 282 Mikados on its roster, built mostly by American Locomotive Company between 1913 and 1924. When larger engines came on the scene in the early 1940s, the Mikes weren't the big power on the Grand Trunk anymore, and they no longer pulled the hottest freights on the railroad. But in the late 1950s, when these scenes were shot, 19 engines of the Mikado type were working in just about every kind of service the GTW could throw at them. The newer ones, like S3B class number 3740, that got the large 12,000-gallon, 18-ton tenders, could do anything. Maybe work their guts out switching the Oxford gravel pits one day, then pull a Detroit-Muskegon passenger train at 60 miles per hour or better the next. During those final years, they were truly the general-purpose locomotives of the steam era. A day with one from dawn until dusk, seeing and hearing the engine and train crew at work as they carry out the business of the railroad and meet others doing the same, is a close encounter with steam railroading as it really was. The miles traveled have been few, but it's been a busy day for Extra 3740, with switching at Linden, Fenton, Holly, and Pontiac, and at several industrial spurs along the way, and constant meets with other trains. It's dusk by the time Joe Millett uncouples in Ferndale Yard at the Detroit city limits, drops the caboose and train crew for the night, and heads to the roundhouse at Milwaukee Junction, where this venerable 282 will be prepared for the return trip to Durand the next day, while he and Ackerman bed down. What they may have suspected then, but didn't fully realize, was that 3740's days, and the days of all steam power on American railroads, were soon to end. It was on the Grand Trunk Western where that last breath of fire occurred, where the last whistle died forever, leaving only an epitaph and a memory. A year after the last of these scenes were photographed, engine 3740, given a new number near the end, was out of service and stored in white lead to prevent corrosion. Only 7 Grand Trunk 282s were still active. Little more than a year after that, March 27, 1960, the last regularly scheduled passenger train pulled by a steam locomotive on a Class I U.S. railroad made the run from Detroit to Durand and back in 2 heavily loaded sections to close the 130-year era of the Iron Horse in this country.